Life Stories brings you incredible real-life experiences filled with emotion, resilience, and powerful lessons. Imagine spending your whole life feeling invisible, overshadowed by a sister who always had everything handed to her. But what happens when the tables finally turn on the most important day of all? This is the story of Jessica, a woman who endured years of neglect, only to rise above it and take control of her own happiness. Stay with us as we unfold this gripping journey of love, betrayal, and redemption. Subscribe to Life Stories to begin today's story. My name is Jessica, and for as long as I can remember, I have known what it means to be invisible. Not in the literal sense. Of course, I existed. I moved through the same rooms as my family. I ate at the same dinner table. But in their eyes, I was nothing more than a shadow. My older sister, Ashley, was the sun. She was dazzling, radiant, the kind of person people couldn't help but admire. Even as a child, she had an effortless charm, a natural beauty that made strangers stop and comment. What a lovely girl. She was the one our parents adored, the one they showered with attention, gifts, and praise. And I was simply there, like a forgotten detail in the background of her story. It wasn't always easy to pinpoint exactly when I realized I was unwanted. Perhaps it was the first time I noticed the way my parents' voices softened whenever they spoke to Ashley, but remained flat and indifferent when addressing me. Or maybe it was the birthdays, those awful reminders that even on my special day, I was still second best. Every year, Ashley received a gift on my birthday. And somehow, it was always bigger, more expensive, more thoughtful than whatever small present I was given. "We don't want Ashley to feel left out," my mother would say with a smile, as if my own feelings never mattered. I used to believe that if I worked hard enough, I could earn their love. I poured myself into my studies, staying up late into the night, pushing myself to be the best in school. I thought, just once, if I brought home a perfect score, they would look at me the way they looked at Ashley. When I ranked first in my entire grade, my heart swelled with pride. I rushed home, eager to share the news, already imagining the moment my parents would finally say, "We're proud of you, Jessica." Instead, my mother barely glanced at my report card. "Don't stand out in weird ways," she muttered. "It would be embarrassing for Ashley if people thought you were better than her." That was the moment I understood the truth. No matter what I did, I would never be enough. Ashley, of course, knew this too, and she took full advantage of it. She had this way of stealing from me not just my belongings, but the small joys I managed to find in life. If I showed interest in something, she would swoop in and claim it as her own. And suddenly, it was no longer mine to enjoy. If I had a favorite dress, she would wear it first, parading around in it like it was hers all along. If I made a new friend, she would charm them, pull them into her orbit, until I was nothing more than an afterthought in their eyes too. But the worst came when I was in middle school. There was a boy I liked. I had never spoken to him, never even dared to dream that he might notice me. But somehow, Ashley found out, and instead of teasing me like a normal sister might, she did something worse. She made sure he fell for her instead. Within days, they were a couple. She would hold his hand right in front of me, lean in close and whisper things in his ear, all while casting me these triumphant little glances as if to say, "Look what I took from you." She didn't just take people away from me, she made sure to ruin me in their eyes. She knew my secrets, the things I had confided in her when I was foolish enough to believe she was capable of kindness. And she used them as weapons. Somehow, boys I had never even spoken to knew embarrassing details about me. I didn't understand how until one day, I overheard Ashley laughing with her friends, casually throwing my secrets into the air as if they were nothing more than cheap gossip. I wanted to fight back. I wanted to tell her that she had no right to do this to me. But I knew it would be useless. If I so much as raised my voice against Ashley, my parents would come down on me like a storm. To them, she could do no wrong. If we argued, I was always the one who got scolded. If she took something from me, I was selfish for wanting it back. So, I learned to endure. For years, I tried to disappear within my own home, keeping my head down, hoping that if I asked for nothing, expected nothing, maybe it would hurt less. But the pain was always there, lingering beneath the surface, waiting to remind me that I was alone. When it came time for university, my future was stolen from me in a single sentence. "We've wasted enough money on you," my parents said dismissively. "It's time for you to start working and pay us back." Ashley, of course, had everything handed to her. She had the best clothes, the best schools, the best opportunities. Meanwhile, I wasn't even allowed to dream. I might have lost hope completely if it weren't for a single person, my high school teacher. When he noticed that I wasn't applying to any universities, he pulled me aside and asked why. At first, I hesitated. But when I finally told him the truth, his expression darkened. "I wish I could help," he said, sadness in his voice. "But it's a family matter." And just like that, my future slipped through my fingers. But my teacher didn't give up on me. He helped me find a job, arranged an interview for me at a well-known company. And when I got the job, for the first time in my life, I felt something close to hope. I told my parents, expecting, if not happiness, at least acknowledgement. But they barely reacted. "Just make sure you bring in money," they said. That was all. No congratulations. No encouragement. Just another reminder that to them, I was only useful if I could provide something. It was then that I made my decision. I would become independent. I would save every penny, work as hard as I needed to, and leave this house behind forever. And I did. It took years. But eventually, I had enough to move out on my own. At first, it felt strange, like I had abandoned something I was supposed to hold on to. But as time passed, I realized something incredible. I was happy. Without them. Without the constant weight of their indifference. I felt lighter. I told myself that I was done with them, that I had finally escaped. But as I would soon learn, Ashley wasn't finished with me yet. For a while, my life was peaceful. I had my own apartment. My job was stable. And for the first time, I was truly free. No more walking on eggshells. No more feeling like I had to prove my worth to people who would never care. I didn't have much, but I had enough. And then, I met David. David was everything I had never known before: kind, patient, and unwavering in his love. When we first started dating, I kept waiting for the moment when he would change, when he would turn cold like everyone else in my life had. But he never did. He listened to me, respected me, and never once made me feel small. When he proposed, I couldn't believe it. I had spent so many years believing I was unworthy of love, that I almost doubted him. "Are you sure?" I asked, my voice trembling. "Are you really okay with someone like me?" David just smiled, took my hands in his, and said, "It has to be you, Jessica. No one else." I wanted to believe him. I wanted to believe that happiness was something I could finally have. But there was one thing that kept pulling me back into the past: my family. David's parents were thrilled to meet me. His mother embraced me like a daughter the moment we were introduced. His father shook my hand and said, "Welcome to the family." It was so warm, so different from what I had known, that I almost felt out of place. Then, his father said something that made my stomach twist. "We'd love to meet your family as well, Jessica. It's important that both families get to know each other." My hands went cold. My family. My parents. Ashley. The thought of sitting in the same room with them again after all these years filled me with dread. David noticed my hesitation and gently squeezed my hand. "If you're uncomfortable, we don't have to rush things," he said. I forced a smile. "I'll be fine." I lied. But the truth was, I wasn't fine. When I finally reached out to my parents, I was met with indifference. Oh, my mother muttered when I told her about the engagement. So what? I swallowed hard, pushing past the lump in my throat. David's family would like to meet you all. My mother sighed. That sounds like a hassle. We're not free. I should have expected this. But it still hurt. I took a deep breath and, knowing exactly how to manipulate them, said, I was thinking of treating everyone to lunch at that fancy restaurant in town. Instantly, Ashley perked up. Wait. That place. Their food is amazing. I'm going. Just like that. My parents' attitude shifted. Oh. If Ashley wants to go, then we'll go too. Not because they wanted to see me. Not because they cared. But because of the expensive meal. The day of the family gathering arrived. And as expected, my family paid little attention to David's parents. They nodded politely but spent the entire meal focused on the food. The only time they showed interest in anything was when David's parents casually asked about Ashley. My mother's face lit up. Ashley is our pride and joy, she said. Ashley pretended to be modest, laughing as if she didn't love every second of the attention. Meanwhile, I sat in silence, feeling like I had disappeared again. As soon as the meal ended, my parents stood up. All right. We're leaving now, my mother announced. David's parents were stunned. His mother looked at me with sadness in her eyes. It's even worse than I imagined, she whispered. I sighed. I'm really sorry. David reached for my hand. Jessica. This isn't your fault. In fact, I admire you. You've grown into a wonderful person despite all of this. His mother smiled warmly. From now on, you can think of us as your real family. Hearing those words, I felt something shift inside me, a warmth I had never known before. For the first time in my life, I realized I finally had a real family. For the next few months, I focused on preparing for the wedding. I wanted to keep it small, just close friends and David's family. After meeting my parents, his family understood completely and supported my decision. Then, out of nowhere, Ashley called me. She had never called me before, so I hesitated before answering. Hello. Hey. Jess, she said, her voice light and casual. I've decided to get married too. I blinked. Oh. Congratulations. I'm introducing my fiancé to Mom and Dad next Friday. Come by. Before I could respond, she hung up. I frowned. Unsettled. Something about the way she said it didn't sit right with me. But David reassured me. It's fine, he said. We can stop by for a bit. Then leave. So I went. And the moment I met Ashley's fiancé, I knew something was wrong. He barely glanced at me before saying, Wow. Ashley was right, you really are plain. And just a high school graduate. Huh. I was stunned. Excuse me? He smirked. You don't have a connection with people like me. I clenched my fists. I actually graduated from a well-known university and work at a major company. He waved a hand dismissively. Doesn't matter. You're nothing compared to Ashley. I stood up, unable to take any more. I'm leaving. Ashley suddenly spoke. Wait. I turned. What? She smiled. A slow, cruel smile. Our weddings ended up on the same day. My heart stopped. What? But since yours is small, it doesn't matter. Right. Just close family and all that. I stared at her, realizing exactly what she had done. She had planned her wedding for the exact same date as mine. She wanted to make sure that no one from our family would come to mine. For a moment, I felt that same helplessness I had felt as a child. That familiar, crushing loneliness. But then, something inside me hardened. I had spent my whole life letting Ashley take everything from me. Not this time. The moment Ashley smirked and said those words, I knew she had planned this from the start. She wanted to humiliate me. She wanted to make sure that when I walked down the aisle, I would do it alone, knowing that my own family had chosen her over me. For a brief second, I felt the familiar ache of rejection. The loneliness that had followed me since childhood threatened to take over. But this time, something was different. I wasn't that helpless little girl anymore. I wasn't going to let her win. When I told David about it later that night, he was furious. "She's unbelievable," he muttered. "She can't stand to see you happy." I let out a small, bitter laugh. "She never could." He took my hands in his and looked at me with that steady, reassuring gaze. "Jessica, if your family won't come, let's fill the wedding with people who actually love and support you. We still have 3 months. We can invite more friends, co-workers, people who want to be there for you." I hesitated. "But we planned a small wedding." David shook his head. "We only planned it that way because we thought your family might cause problems. But they're not coming anyway. So why not make it a real celebration?" His words made sense. I had spent so much of my life trying to shrink myself, to make my presence small enough that my family wouldn't resent me for simply existing. But not anymore. This was my wedding. This was supposed to be one of the happiest days of my life. And I wouldn't let Ashley take that from me. So we changed our plans. We moved the reception to a grander venue. We sent out more invitations. David's father, a respected businessman, extended the invite to his company's employees, people who had known David since he was young and were happy to celebrate with us. My friends at work, my old classmates, and even my high school teacher, the one person who had believed in me when no one else had, all confirmed they would be there. I had spent my entire life feeling alone. But now, I realized I wasn't. The day of the wedding arrived, and I felt nervous but excited. The ceremony was beautiful. As I walked down the aisle, I wasn't thinking about who wasn't there, I was thinking about who was. David's parents smiled at me like I was their own daughter. My friends clapped and cheered, their love surrounding me. I was finally happy. And then, just as the reception was in full swing, I saw her, Ashley, standing at the entrance, in her wedding dress. For a second, I thought I was imagining it. But no, there she was. Hair styled to perfection. A smirk on her lips. I walked up to her, my heart pounding. But I forced a calm smile. "Ashley, what are you doing here?" She tossed her hair over her shoulder. "Oh." I got curious. "Your reception looked like so much fun. So I came to see for myself." I clenched my fists. Of course she did. I glanced behind her. My parents were there too, standing awkwardly, as if they hadn't just skipped their own daughter's wedding for Ashley's. And then I noticed something else. Ashley's groom, her arrogant fiancé, wasn't with her. Instead, he stood frozen a few feet away, looking around the room with wide eyes. His face had gone pale. David walked up beside me, and together, we followed his gaze. That's when I saw it. The employees. The ones who were supposed to attend Ashley's wedding. They were all here. Ashley's fiancé suddenly turned to her, his expression shifting from shock to anger. "Why are all my colleagues at her wedding?" he demanded. Ashley frowned, confused. "What are you talking about?" Then, realization dawned on her face. David's father, the CEO of the company her fiancé worked for, stood near the stage, watching everything unfold. It hit Ashley's fiancé like a ton of bricks. He turned to David's father in horror. "Wait, you're her father-in-law?" David's father gave a small, knowing smile. "Yes, I am. And I heard that someone deliberately planned their wedding on the same day as my son's." "Care to explain why?" Ashley's fiancé immediately panicked. "I had no idea. It wasn't my idea, it was Ashley's. She wanted to humiliate her own sister." Ashley's eyes widened. "Excuse me? You said it would be fun to put her in her place," he shot back. "You told me it was your idea." Ashley turned red with rage. "Are you seriously blaming this on me? You agreed to it." The two of them started arguing right in the middle of my wedding reception. Guests stared, some whispering, others trying to hold back laughter. David's father sighed and shook his head. "Enough. This is Jessica and David's wedding reception. Not your circus. Ashley's fiancé looked around, suddenly aware of how ridiculous he must have seemed. Without another word, he turned and stormed out. Ashley, still in her wedding dress, hesitated for only a second before running after him. Just like that, they were gone. David turned to me and squeezed my hand. Are you okay? I let out a breath I hadn't realized I was holding. Then, for the first time in a long time, I smiled. I am. For the rest of the night, we celebrated. We laughed. We danced. And for once, I wasn't thinking about my past. I was looking forward. And for the first time in my life, my future looked bright. After that night, everything changed. Ashley's engagement fell apart. And my parents, humiliated by the disaster they had chosen to support, turned their frustration toward her. The daughter they had once adored was now the source of their shame. But none of it mattered to me anymore. I had already cut ties with them. And for the first time, I felt truly free. David and I built a beautiful life together. His parents became the family I had always longed for. And I no longer carried the burden of trying to prove my worth to people who never cared. I had spent my entire life in Ashley's shadow. But now, I was standing in the light, strong, happy, and finally at peace. No matter where you come from, you have the power to shape your own future. Subscribe to Life Stories for more inspiring videos.